Chapter 11. Desperation. Reid adjusted his grip, feeling Fenrir respond instinctively beneath him, the mech mirroring his cautious movements. The remaining two paladin knights stood motionless for a brief, tense moment, their armored figures shimmering subtly as morning sunlight glinted off polished metal. Reid braced himself, heart pounding, ready for another relentless assault. Yet the attack did not come. Without warning, the paladins exchanged a silent glance and stepped back cautiously, quickly disappearing into the Imperial ranks. Reid hesitated, pulse quickening with uncertainty, wary that their disciplined retreat concealed some greater threat. Around him the battle continued unabated. Knights clashed fiercely, swords ringing sharply as armor plates buckled beneath powerful blows. Imperial siege engines continued their relentless advance, their heavy wheels grinding across trampled earth, battering rams and siege towers looming closer with each passing moment. Yet in this brief instant, Reid found himself alone in a strange pocket of calm, a momentary eye at the heart of the storm. Confusion settled heavily upon him. Why had two of the Empire's elite warriors, disciplined and unyielding, withdrawn so suddenly? Reid's instincts screamed caution, warning him that something was terribly wrong. He quickly scanned the battlefield, eyes narrowing as he sought any clue, any explanation for this sudden shift. Fenrir shifted cautiously beneath him, its massive limbs poised defensively as Reid turned the mech to survey the chaotic landscape once more. The young mage Elric, who moments earlier had bravely joined the fray, had been whisked away to safety by Althea's knights. Reid caught glimpses of the boy retreating, grateful that his courage had been rewarded by the defenders' swift action. He could also see Althea's knights forming tightly disciplined ranks, holding their ground against surging Imperial infantry, and maintaining a tenuous defense line around the mages who still fought from a distance, casting precise arcs of devastating magic from atop the battlements. Reid tightened his hold on Fenrir's controls, the mech responding instantly, repositioning itself carefully in anticipation of the inevitable next threat. Fenrir's armor groaned, battered yet resilient, each movement heavy with exhaustion from the relentless fighting. He felt an unsettling tension settling over him, unease prickling sharply at his instincts. Everything about the paladin's retreat felt calculated, intentional, strategic rather than cowardly. Reid's instincts screamed warning once more, knowing something was poised just beyond his perception, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. From atop the castle walls, Althea was shouting orders, rallying defenders whose courage briefly wavered under the Empire's relentless pressure. Reid caught glimpses of archers repositioning swiftly, arrows nocked and ready, aiming carefully at approaching enemy formations. Yet amidst all this activity, Reid felt distinctly isolated, standing resolutely yet vulnerable amid the open field. Fenrir's shadow stretched long across the churned battlefield, stark against the earth, marked by scattered weapons, fallen soldiers, and lingering smoke drifting from shattered siege engines. The brief unsettling calm gave Reid time to steady himself, slowing his breathing deliberately. He glanced briefly at the paladin's sword still clutched firmly within Fenrir's grip, its energy pulsing reassuringly, providing comfort despite the uncertainty surrounding him. The sword's power resonated deeply with Reid, its magic seamlessly connected with Fenrir's own arcane strength, reinforcing his confidence even as anxiety prickled at the edge of his senses. But his calm was fleeting. The sound of renewed Imperial horns blared sharply across the battlefield, a fresh note of triumph in their call that unsettled Reid profoundly. Imperial infantry began pressing forward once more, forming disciplined lines, their previous disarray rapidly replaced by renewed purpose and cohesion. As Reid repositioned Fenrir carefully, preparing to confront the fresh waves of Imperial troops surging forward, his gaze was suddenly drawn toward a movement deeper within enemy ranks. His stomach clenched tightly, apprehension spiking sharply through him. The Imperial lines began to shift abruptly, disciplined ranks parting to reveal the ominous silhouettes of three corrupted Titanum Ferrum. Their twisted forms moved deliberately, crackling with dark, arcane energy. Once proud constructs now warped beyond recognition. Armor plates darkened and scarred by unnatural power, they radiated a lethal confidence that sent a chill rippling through Reid. His breath caught. The Empire had unleashed a terrifying new threat. They had held something back, something dangerous. Frighteningly similar, yet disturbingly alien. Smaller than Fenrir, yet unmistakably deadly. These abominations advanced with dark energy coiling around them, corruption made flesh. Fenrir's radiance stood in sharp defiance. Reid's heart pounded. The paladin's retreat made brutal sense now. They had merely cleared the way. These corrupted Titanum Ferrum were what Reid had glimpsed before, twisted mockeries of Fenrir, brought to life through the Empire's ruthless experiments. The implications hit hard. They hadn't just recovered ancient mechs. They had infused them with dark magic, creating something unprecedented in power and malevolence. Imperial soldiers, once wavering, now surged forward with renewed purpose. Their cries rose sharply across the field, bolstered by the terrifying champions striding alongside them. Infantry tightened ranks, archers repositioned, and knights regrouped, disciplined and confident once more under the shadow of these corrupted war machines. Fenrir shifted defensively beneath Reid, the battered but resilient armor plates grinding slightly as the mech positioned itself to face the rapidly approaching enemy. Reid felt the mech's power resonating beneath his fingers, its familiar strength steadying him against rising anxiety. Despite Fenrir's damage, it stood firm, unyielding, still ready to defend Veletria to its last breath. As the corrupted mechs drew closer, Reid studied them carefully, absorbing every detail of their twisted design. Each construct stood roughly 2/3 the size of Fenrir, their frames lean and sinister, designed for swift, precise attacks rather than brute force. Their limbs moved fluidly, unnaturally graceful, yet intimidatingly agile, powered by the swirling dark magic clearly visible beneath their tarnished plating. Reid felt a surge of determination replace his initial dread. He focused carefully, channeling Fenrir's remaining strength through the paladin's sword that Fenrir still grasped firmly in its massive metal hand. The sword responded immediately, its brilliant radiance flaring brighter, cutting sharply through the oppressive aura cast by the enemy's dark magic. Reid's resolve deepened. Fenrir's blazing weapon was a clear signal to both his allies and enemies. He would not falter, regardless of the odds. Across the battlefield, Althea and her knights briefly glanced in Reid's direction, visibly strengthened by Fenrir's defiant stance. Their courage redoubled, each warrior fighting more fiercely, inspired by the mech's unyielding spirit. Archers atop the walls quickly adjusted their aim, carefully targeting Imperial soldiers attempting to exploit the confusion. Reid, sensing the growing urgency, braced himself fully, hands tightening around Fenrir's controls. He knew instinctively this would be his hardest fight yet. These corrupted Titanum Ferrum represented a lethal combination of technology and dark magic, opponents specifically designed to counter and overcome Fenrir's advantages. Their presence was a stark reminder of the Empire's ruthless determination to dominate and control through any means necessary. The three corrupted mechs halted their advance briefly, taking careful measure of Fenrir, seeming to recognize the powerful adversary facing them. Then, in perfect synchronization, they surged forward, their movements disturbingly smooth and coordinated. Reid reacted instantly, guiding Fenrir forward to meet their assault head-on, refusing to yield ground. Steel clashed violently against steel as Fenrir's paladin sword met the dark-infused blades wielded by the corrupted Titanum Ferrum. Explosions of energy rippled outward with each impact, illuminating the battlefield with harsh contrasts of light and shadow. Reid guided Fenrir's every move with practiced precision, parrying swift, calculated strikes and delivering punishing counterattacks that sent sparks scattering across damaged armor. Yet the corrupted mechs fought ruthlessly, leveraging their superior agility to flank Fenrir repeatedly, striking relentlessly from multiple angles. Their dark energy surged and hissed with each blow, straining Fenrir's already compromised defenses. Reid gritted his teeth, muscles straining under the intense effort required to keep pace with his nimble foes. Imperial infantry surged around the mechanical clash, emboldened by their new champions, pressing forward aggressively toward the castle gates and Veletria's weary defenders. Althea, Valen, and their warriors fought fiercely, struggling to hold ground against the renewed Imperial offensive. In the midst of the frantic, punishing combat, Reid's resolve deepened further. He knew surrender was not an option. Every swing of the paladin's sword carried his unwavering determination, every defensive maneuver displaying Fenrir's enduring resilience. The battle had intensified rapidly, its outcome dangerously uncertain. Yet Reid felt no hesitation, no fear. He understood the profound stakes clearly. recognizing fully that the fate of everyone he'd come to respect, admire, and love hinged upon this brutal confrontation. Fenrir and its blazing sword became an extension of his determination, symbols of the courage, strength, and spirit of a city unwilling to yield in the face of overwhelming darkness. Fenrir surged forward immediately, feet pounding against the churned battlefield, as Reid expertly guided the massive mech straight into the advancing trio of corrupted Titanum Ferrum. Each heavy footfall shook the earth beneath, announcing Fenrir's defiance as it swiftly closed the gap. Reid narrowed his focus, concentrating solely on the nearest of the three enemy constructs, seeking to exploit even the slightest advantage. The corrupted mechs were nimble and ruthless, their smaller frames darting with unsettling agility around Fenrir's sweeping attacks. Dark energy coiled visibly around their limbs, each strike they made accompanied by bursts of shadowy magic that crackled and hissed violently upon impact. Reid maneuvered Fenrir carefully, adjusting tactics rapidly to compensate for their unpredictability. His mind raced through possibilities, formulating and discarding strategies at a blistering pace. Fenrir swung the blazing paladin sword in a powerful arc, aiming to catch one of the corrupted mechs as it danced in too close. But the enemy anticipated the move, evading narrowly, countering instantly with a vicious strike that sliced deeply into Fenrir's already compromised side. Sparks showered the battlefield, and the cockpit shuddered violently under the blow, red warning lights flickering urgently across Reid's controls. Reid cursed sharply, fighting to maintain control, feeling Fenrir's structure strain beneath the assault. The corrupted mech pressed its advantage aggressively, its dark-infused blades swinging relentlessly at Fenrir's exposed armor. Reid guided Fenrir backward sharply, creating just enough space to regain defensive posture. In the same instant, another corrupted mech circled swiftly from behind, its movements perfectly coordinated with its companion. Reid felt sweat bead along his brow as he swiftly turned Fenrir to meet the new threat, parrying the enemy's shadow-charged blade in a fierce collision that sent a shockwave of magical energy rippling outward. The enemy mech staggered momentarily, briefly destabilized by Fenrir's sheer power. Reid seized the opportunity, commanding Fenrir forward, delivering a crushing blow that tore into the corrupted mech's armor, splintering and fracturing metal plates with devastating force. Yet even as Reid gained ground, the third corrupted mech joined the fray, striking decisively from the flank. Its dark blade carved deeply into Fenrir's thigh, armor plates buckling loudly under the relentless assault. Pain shot through Reid's senses as feedback surged sharply through his connection to Fenrir. He gritted his teeth against the intense sensation, fighting desperately to maintain focus. Fenrir stumbled, armor plates buckling sharply under dark magic, the tether ring flaring desperately to stabilize the mech's strained systems. Reid felt the ring's power ripple through his fingertips, a desperate attempt by the magical anchor to hold Fenrir's failing frame intact under intense pressure. The corrupted mechs regrouped briefly, their dark energies swirling ominously around them. They clearly recognized Fenrir's weakening state, sensing vulnerability, preparing themselves to press their advantage mercilessly. Reid drew a deep, ragged breath, quickly assessing his options. He knew conventional tactics wouldn't suffice. These corrupted constructs were too swift, too powerful. He needed to improvise, to leverage Fenrir's remaining strengths cleverly. Focusing intently, Reid channeled the paladin sword's radiant energy deliberately, building power carefully within the blade. The sword hummed sharply, its energy intensifying rapidly, pulsing in rhythm with Reid's pounding heart. Fenrir raised the blade high, the sword blazing brilliantly as Reid guided the mech forward once more directly into the enemy's calculated formation. The corrupted mechs responded instantly, converging aggressively upon Fenrir, their dark blades raised in perfect unison. In the final instant before impact, Reid unleashed the sword's carefully stored energy in a concentrated blast of brilliant light and power. Radiance exploded outward in every direction, temporarily blinding the corrupted constructs, disrupting their coordinated attack. Fenrir swung swiftly in the moment of confusion, its blade cutting powerfully into one corrupted mech's torso, slicing deep into the corrupted armor and sending it staggering backward. A second enemy recovered swiftly, charging forward with ruthless determination. Reid parried sharply, engaging it fiercely, each collision between Fenrir's sword and the enemy's blade sending waves of magical energy cascading across the battlefield. Despite Reid's resourcefulness, the corrupted mech's agility and dark magic continued to strain Fenrir's remaining capabilities. Every counterstrike he delivered came with growing difficulty, each maneuver increasingly taxing Fenrir's damaged frame. Armor plating cracked and buckled visibly under repeated punishment, the sounds of strained metal and magical energy becoming increasingly pronounced. The tether ring's magic flared desperately, struggling valiantly to maintain Fenrir's integrity, its protective energy flickering under intense magical assault. Reid knew Fenrir couldn't withstand this punishment indefinitely, yet surrender remained unthinkable. Too much depended upon him. Too many lives hung precariously upon his actions. Reid redoubled his resolve, determination hardening within him. He continued battling fiercely, holding the corrupted mechs at bay through sheer force of will, tactical ingenuity, and Fenrir's remaining strength. He pivoted and maneuvered with expert precision, delivering powerful, calculated strikes, keeping the enemy uncertain and hesitant to commit fully. Despite mounting exhaustion and Fenrir's significant damage, Reid pressed onward relentlessly, driven by an unyielding sense of responsibility. He fought on fiercely, each strike and counterstrike symbolic of Veletria's courageous defiance, reflecting the resilience and bravery of every defender fighting fiercely across the battered city walls. From atop the battlements, Commander Thane watched Fenrir's desperate struggle and immediately turned, urgently calling to the battle mages nearby. "Prepare to advance!" Thane's voice resonated with commanding authority, cutting through the chaotic din of battle. "Fenrir requires immediate support. Our long-range spells aren't enough. We must close the gap and engage directly." The chosen mages, battle-hardened and unwavering, exchanged resolute nods. Each understood clearly the gravity of the decision. Advancing onto an active battlefield was perilous, especially for mages more accustomed to careful, precise attacks from protected positions. Yet none hesitated, recognizing that Fenrir's survival was critical to Veletria's fate. Swiftly they moved into formation, staffs glowing brilliantly with barely contained arcane energy. Accompanying them, a hand-picked squad of elite knights readied themselves, armored figures taking defensive stances around their magical counterparts. At Thane's signal, the group surged forward, descending rapidly from the battlements and racing across open ground toward the chaotic melee. Enemy arrows and spells flashed overhead, each step forward placing the mages and knights deeper into peril. Yet their pace never faltered, and soon they reached an optimal distance to unleash their devastating spells. Immediately, brilliant arcs of magic erupted from the advancing mages' staffs, slicing with lethal precision into enemy formations. Imperial soldiers caught unprepared, staggered, and fell under the focused barrage, their organized ranks dissolving rapidly into confusion. Explosions of energy detonated amid clustered enemy troops, creating gaps in Imperial lines, allowing Veletria's defenders to regroup and press forward more aggressively. Imperial commanders, recognizing the threat, swiftly redirected their attention, barking frantic orders. Soldiers surged toward the advancing mage unit, attempting to halt their deadly progress. Yet each mage was shielded by the disciplined knights accompanying them, their swords and shields forming a protective perimeter that repelled the fierce enemy charge. From behind enemy lines, the two paladin knights who had previously withdrawn noticed the dramatic shift in momentum caused by the advancing mages. With cold, calculating precision, they exchanged a brief glance of understanding before swiftly redirecting their attention. They recognized the critical need to eliminate the mages, whose presence was rapidly destabilizing the Empire's hold on the battlefield. Without hesitation, both paladins surged forward, dark blades blazing ominously as they carved a brutal path through the intervening chaos toward the mage formation. Their advance was swift and ruthless, armored figures cutting swiftly through ranks of soldiers in their path. From her vantage point atop the castle walls, Althea saw the two Imperial paladins advancing rapidly toward Thane's exposed mages. Understanding instantly that the brave mages would soon be overwhelmed, she made a swift decision. Turning urgently to the nearest group of elite knights stationed beside her, she raised her voice clearly above the chaos of battle. "Follow me! We must defend the mages at once!" Without hesitation, she descended rapidly from the battlements, knights quickly rallying around her as she moved toward the heart of the conflict. Her sword drawn and resolve firm, Althea stepped onto the battlefield with determination, directly confronting the approaching threat. "To me, defend the mages at all costs!" Althea's voice echoed powerfully across the battlefield, infused with authority and determination. Her knights responded instantly, forming a disciplined, armored barrier against the approaching Imperial champions. The two paladins crashed fiercely into Althea's defensive line, blades swinging with lethal intent. A brutal, frantic clash erupted instantly, steel and magic colliding violently. Althea stood at the forefront, her own paladin-enhanced strength and determination shining brightly as she parried and countered the relentless strikes of her formidable adversaries. Around her, knights fought valiantly, their courage unwavering even as the Imperial paladins pressed forward aggressively, each strike delivered with calculated precision and ruthless efficiency. Althea's skill and leadership inspired the knights around her, every defender understanding clearly that their survival hinged upon holding these powerful enemies at bay. Meanwhile, protected by Althea's fierce defense, the mages continued their deadly assault against enemy formations, further disrupting Imperial ranks. Their spells remained precise, powerful arcs of magical energy tearing devastatingly into enemy infantry and siege units. Explosions of magical energy illuminated the battlefield vividly, sending enemy soldiers scattering in confusion and fear. Commander Thane observed from the battlements with tense satisfaction as the mages continued their disciplined advance, each carefully coordinated spell adding pressure on the Imperial forces, giving Reid and Fenrir crucial breathing room. Yet Thane understood keenly the precariousness of the moment. Althea and her knights battled desperately against the relentless paladins, and Fenrir, though momentarily aided, remained heavily embattled by the corrupted Titanum Ferrum. Althea, sword gleaming brilliantly with magical energy, skillfully deflected a vicious strike from one of the paladins, counterattacking swiftly and forcing her opponent back briefly. Yet the other paladin took advantage of the brief distraction, lunging aggressively toward her exposed side. One of Althea's knights intercepted immediately, sacrificing himself valiantly, armor buckling beneath the enemy's blade. The brutal melee intensified rapidly, each defender driven by fierce determination to protect the mages and maintain their fragile advantage. The paladin's skill and raw power threatened to overwhelm even Althea's disciplined defense, yet she fought fiercely onward, courage undiminished. Across the battlefield, Reid, sensing the shift in momentum created by the brave mages, redoubled his efforts. Fenrir surged powerfully, delivering decisive blows against the corrupted mechs, capitalizing on their brief hesitation caused by the magical chaos erupting around them. His heart swelled with fierce pride for the bravery displayed by the mages and knights risking everything alongside him. Yet the battle remained perilously balanced. Though the mages' advance had disrupted Imperial ranks significantly, Althea's desperate struggle against the ruthless paladins was uncertain at best. Reid understood clearly the critical need to finish this battle swiftly. Fenrir's damaged frame groaned ominously beneath him, armor plates fractured and buckling further under sustained assault. With fierce resolve, Reid guided Fenrir forward once more, the blazing paladin sword swinging decisively against the corrupted Titanum Ferrum. He knew the fight was far from finished, yet each movement was guided by fierce determination and unwavering courage, driven by the valor of every defender risking their lives across this desperate battlefield. Exhaustion gripped Veletria's defenders, yet each soldier battled fiercely against increasingly desperate odds. Imperial troops pressed relentlessly onward, sensing victory within their grasp, their confidence rising as Fenrir visibly weakened under the relentless assault of the corrupted mechs. The Imperial siege engines drew ever closer, looming ominously, poised to deliver the final devastating blows against Veletria's beleaguered defenses. Althea, sword flashing brilliantly as she parried vicious blows from the relentless paladins, felt the heavy weight of fatigue gnawing insistently at her strength. Despite her unwavering determination and the fierce courage of her knights, she could sense clearly their line beginning to falter under the sheer brutality of the enemy's assault. Imperial paladins struck with merciless precision, dark blades battering against shields and armor, steadily forcing her warriors backward. Reid, controlling Fenrir with growing difficulty, delivered another powerful blow against the corrupted Titanum Ferrum, forcing one mech briefly onto its back foot. Yet Fenrir's remaining strength continued to wane, systems flickering and struggling beneath the overwhelming magical energy of his foes. The tether ring's magic strained visibly, its stabilizing energy flickering and weakening under sustained pressure. Desperation surged through Reid, yet he pressed fiercely onward, driven by the need to protect his allies. Just as defeat seemed certain, powerful northern horns echoed across the battlefield, dramatically signaling the arrival of urgently awaited reinforcements. The sound was sudden and stirring, immediately halting Imperial troops mid-step, causing heads to turn sharply toward the unexpected sound. Althea's heart leaped sharply, hope surging powerfully within her. She recognized immediately the significance of those horns, the call of the northern reinforcements she had urgently summoned over a week earlier. Memories flashed swiftly through her mind of the messengers she had dispatched to Mornmaw Gate and Affenbarrow, the northern lords who had sworn their fealty and promised aid should it ever be required. She whispered a quiet, heartfelt prayer of gratitude, knowing that her desperate plea had been heard and answered in the critical moment of need. From the north, a fresh and formidable army surged rapidly onto the battlefield, their disciplined formations cutting swiftly across the terrain toward the Empire's exposed flank. Leading the charge was a powerful contingent of heavily armored cavalry, their banners streaming proudly, vividly depicting the heraldry of northern houses long loyal to Veletria. Horses galloped fiercely, their armored riders lowering long lances as they closed the distance with breathtaking speed. Behind the cavalry came disciplined ranks of northern infantry, each formation tightly organized and moving purposefully toward the conflict. Among their ranks strode skilled battle mages, their staffs glowing brightly with gathered magic, prepared to unleash devastating spells upon the Imperial forces. The northern reinforcements struck fiercely and decisively, crashing directly into the Empire's flank with thunderous force, completely catching Imperial commanders off guard. Imperial soldiers, utterly unprepared for this new threat, found themselves swiftly overwhelmed by the disciplined might and fierce valor of the northern allies. Panic rippled rapidly through enemy ranks as cavalry charged relentlessly into their exposed sides, lances piercing armor effortlessly. Northern infantry advanced methodically, engaging enemy formations with ruthless efficiency, blades cutting decisively through Imperial troops desperately struggling to regroup. Northern mages, positioned safely behind advancing infantry lines, unleashed devastating arcs of magic, powerful spells detonating spectacularly within tightly clustered enemy ranks. Magical explosions ripped fiercely through Imperial formations, scattering troops and shattering siege engines. The disciplined, combined assault of cavalry, infantry, and mages immediately shifted the battle's momentum, forcing Imperial commanders into frantic, desperate attempts to stabilize their collapsing lines. Veletria's exhausted defenders watched in stunned relief and renewed hope as the northern reinforcements advanced decisively, pressing forward against the rapidly crumbling enemy lines. Althea felt fierce pride and gratitude swell within her as she swiftly regrouped her knights, rallying their flagging morale. She raised her voice powerfully, calling out orders clearly and decisively, her tone resonant with renewed confidence and determination. "Press forward now! Drive them back!" Althea shouted clearly above the din, her warriors responding instantly, surging forward once more to meet their newfound allies in a combined offensive against the staggered and disorganized Imperial forces. Reid, witnessing the dramatic arrival of northern reinforcements, felt fresh energy flood his exhausted limbs, bolstering his resolve. He guided Fenrir forward decisively once more, the battered mech still clutching the blazing paladin sword, poised defiantly against the corrupted Titanum Ferrum. Sensing hesitation and confusion within the enemy constructs, he seized the opportunity immediately, driving Fenrir into a fierce, renewed attack, determined to press his advantage. All around the battlefield, Veletria's defenders rallied powerfully, their earlier exhaustion and despair replaced swiftly by fresh courage and renewed vigor. Imperial forces, utterly shaken by the fierce, unexpected assault from the northern reinforcements, began faltering visibly, their disciplined ranks rapidly dissolving under relentless northern pressure. Commander Thane, observing closely from atop the battered castle walls, felt fierce pride and relief swell within him, understanding clearly the significance of this pivotal moment. He ordered the mages remaining upon the walls to redouble their long-range attacks, swiftly taking advantage of the enemy's confusion, targeting enemy troops and siege engines desperately attempting to regroup. Hope surged powerfully across Veletria's defenders, fresh confidence radiating from every warrior standing courageously against the Empire's crumbling forces. The battlefield shifted dramatically, the desperate struggle replaced swiftly by fierce momentum in Veletria's favor, driven decisively by the disciplined might and courageous valor of the northern reinforcements. Reid fought on fiercely, determination burning brightly within him, Fenrir's remaining strength bolstered by this critical moment of renewed hope. He understood clearly the battle was far from over, but for the first time since the desperate conflict began, victory no longer seemed beyond their grasp. Yet despite this newfound advantage, the corrupted Titanum Ferrum proved relentless. Their twisted frames still moved with alarming speed, striking with lethal precision, each attack infused with devastating dark energy. Reid, though buoyed by hope, could feel exhaustion steadily eroding his focus. Each motion required greater effort, each response from Fenrir growing increasingly sluggish. He knew he had to act swiftly before fatigue and damage rendered Fenrir completely defenseless. Then, in a sudden flash of opportunity, a brilliant arc of magic surged across the battlefield. One of Veletria's mages had struck true. A concentrated blast of arcane energy slammed into the side of a corrupted Titanum Ferrum, staggering it briefly. The construct faltered, dark energy flaring wildly as it tried to recover its balance. Reid didn't hesitate. Seizing the moment, he drove Fenrir forward decisively. The paladin's sword blazed with radiant power as it carved into the exposed torso of the reeling enemy mech. The strike landed clean and fierce, slicing through weakened armor plates and severing crucial internal mechanisms. The corrupted Titanum Ferrum emitted an eerie, distorted cry as it collapsed, dark energy flickering violently before its frame went still and lifeless. But the victory came at a heavy cost. Fenrir shuddered violently, internal mechanisms straining beyond their limits. Red warning lights flared across the cockpit as sparks showered around Reid. He gritted his teeth, wrestling for control as Fenrir's core struggled to stabilize. The damage was severe. Movement was sluggish now, reactions delayed, the mech's once mighty strength clearly fading. As the dust cleared, the two remaining corrupted Titanum Ferrum closed ranks, advancing slowly, dark power swirling menacingly around their forms. Reid drew a heavy breath, knowing he was now at his most vulnerable. His gaze shifted momentarily to the distant walls of Veletria, where defenders stood locked in fierce, desperate combat. Time was running out. He could only hope the city could hold until Fenrir was ready for one final stand. Reid braced himself with determined resolve, Fenrir straightening defiantly as he raised the blazing paladin sword, prepared to face whatever came next, knowing Veletria's fate hung by a thread.